Here is something that I've noticed after years of coaching people through conflict, and that is the arguments that do the most damage in a relationship are almost never about what they appear to be about. The fight that starts over the dishes, for example, then they're left in the sink and we blow up about that, isn't actually about the dishes. The blow up about being late for dinner isn't actually about being late for that particular dinner. Those are just surface level behaviors. Underneath them, almost every single time, is one of 5 small communication patterns that have been quietly running the relationship for months, usually years. And these patterns get embedded and they just feel like, oh, this is just the way we are. This is just the way we connect or the way that we argue. This is just like our personality. What those are habits of communication, behaviors. And the cool part is behaviors and habits can be changed. And so what I want to share with you today are 5 super small shifts. These changes that literally take seconds to make in the middle of a conversation that have a huge impact on the amount of drama a relationship carries. I've watched couples who've had the same explosive arguments every 3 weeks make one of these shifts and not have that argument again because they've got a new pattern for how they're connecting. Let's dive in and I'll give you all 5. Now, as we dive in, it's important to frame this content with a concept about drama in relationships because I think it really gets misunderstood. And that is that drama doesn't mean that you're with the wrong person. Fighting doesn't mean that you're with the wrong person. It doesn't mean the relationship is broken. Every single relationship has friction. The question isn't whether conflict is going to show up. It's whether you have the tools to actually turn towards each other and repair that conflict without eroding the foundation of the relationship. And the individuals that I've worked with who have the deepest, most lasting love are not the ones who never fight. They're the ones who actually fight the best with the agreements for how they're going to communicate with one another in place. So let me show you what that looks like. Agreement number 1 is to lead with what you saw, not the meaning you make out of it. Most arguments escalate in the very first sentence. You come in hot, you make an accusation, or you blame your partner. And when this happens, almost always our partner is going to get defensive, right? It triggers their defensiveness. They're protecting themselves because they feel attacked. And once defensiveness kicks in, you are no longer solving a problem together. You're actually fighting. You're in opposite teams in conflict with one another. Now, if you want to go super deep into these communication tools, they are all right here in Cracking the Man Code. You can get your copy. I'll put a link below for you. And I want to give you an example of my own life to really illustrate this. When my wife and I were first married and living together, I would go to the gym. I'd get super sweaty. I'm one of those guys, I just sweat a ton. I would come home and I would take my sweaty gym clothes off and I'd lay them on the bathtub. And my wife would get so frustrated with that. And she was like, hey, please, can you leave the clothes outside in the backyard, or can you at least hang them up? I don't want to see them when I go in the bathroom. And I was like, yeah, babe, I will. But I didn't create a new pattern for myself. And so the next day I'm all sweaty and I'm going to take a shower. So I take them off, just leave them there. She comes back. Now it would be very easy to put meaning around my lack of awareness of continuing to put the sweaty clothes there as selfish, as unloving, as you don't respect me, you don't respect my space, all of the story that we put around the circumstance. But when we lead a conversation that way, that if she would have said, you're being so selfish, you're being so like, you don't respect me, you don't, and we inflate the circumstance to have all this other meaning, then it supercharges the argument and the conflict. It actually escalates it. Instead, and here's the shift, when something bothers you or there's an agreement that's been broken, lead with what you actually observe. Be specific, be factual, without any kind of meaning or verdict attached to it. Say, hey, I came into the bathroom and I saw your sweaty gym clothes laying there on the tub. I'd asked you yesterday to please put those someplace else. Would you be willing to recommit to that agreement? Those are factual statements. Not you always leave the gym clothes there, or for the millionth time I have to tell you to put them away. Those types of things just inflame the argument. You are describing an event. You are not indicting this person's character. That's the distinction. As small as it sounds, This determines whether or not he's going to hear a solvable problem or hear an attack that he needs to defend himself from. The Gottman Institute did a bunch of research on this and said when you soft open arguments or conversations that are conflict, it makes a huge difference. When you come and attack somebody, almost always, regardless of how the rest of the conversation goes, just an attack opening leads to 80 to 90% of that conversation ending badly. Agreement number 2 is to shovel while the pile is small. If you have ever mucked out a horse stall, you know that shoveling is hard work and that if you let things accumulate too long, the job gets a whole lot harder. The same principles applies to frustrations in relationship. We know that small emotions build in us over time. And so it might be the way that he dismisses something that you said at dinner and it didn't land right, or the way plans got canceled without an explanation, or a tone in a text he said that really sat wrong with you. None of these things by themselves are worth bringing up, and so you don't. You just say, okay, I'm going to sweep that under the rug. I'm not going to bring it up. And then one hard day, something small tips that pile, and what comes out isn't really about the text, or it isn't really about the comment that he made. It's about months of the small, unaddressed frustrations all arriving at once that feels to your partner like it's a personal attack or like a volcano. Like this particular instance shouldn't bring the level of intensity, the emotional intensity that you're bringing right now. And so this is a mindset shift to say, no, if it's small, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't bring it up. That's actually the moment that you should bring it up because it's easy to deal with it. It's easy to squash. And so if you feel a rattle or uneasiness, something still on your mind 24 hours after it happened, the sweaty gym clothes are still there, or the text that didn't land right, or whatever it is, come to your partner and say, hey, this is no big deal, but I want to just clear the air now before it becomes something big, because I love you and my intention is to be even more connected to you. And allowing each other to bring up small piles and clear that air early is a game changer. Agreement number 3. And some of you are going to love this. Some of you are going to be like, Matt, there's no way I can do this. And it is to remove sarcasm from your language entirely and remove teasing from your language entirely. You may be the person where you love, that's how you joke is sarcasm. That's your sense of humor is teasing and joking. But here's the line. If you're both laughing and having fun, game on. But if one of you is having fun at the other person's expense, over the line. Cut that out. I worked with a woman, I'll call her Karen, who came to me. She was genuinely puzzled because every time she and her husband got into a disagreement, he would shut down. He'd go cold, he'd stop talking, and she couldn't figure out why. Because from her perspective, she was engaging, she was expressive, she was saying exactly what she felt. I asked her, I said, so walk me through one of these recent arguments. And so she described a situation where her husband had suggested a solution to a problem that they'd been dealing with. She responded with, oh, great idea. Because the last 3 great ideas worked out so perfectly. Now, she thought she said it with a light tone and she was kind of joking and making light of the little failures that he had had. But ultimately, there was some deeper frustration coming out as well. And so to him, it just felt like criticism. Here's what we've come to understand about sarcasm in relationships, especially in how it lands on the masculine. Sarcasm doesn't come across as funny. It doesn't come across building connection. It actually communicates mockery. It says, I think you're foolish. And for a man who organizes a significant part of his sense of self around his competence and whether he has the respect of the person that he loves, this lands like a blade. Like it cuts him so deep. And so this husband didn't get defensive and loud. When he would hear this kind of sarcasm, he would go quiet and he would withdraw. He would stop bringing things to the communication table because that table didn't feel safe for him anymore. And so to Karen's credit, she made a new agreement saying she was going to cut out sarcasm and instead communicate her feelings, her wants, desires from a place of way more authenticity. And the cool part is their connection got way better. And so the shift is when you're frustrated, share how you feel simply, directly, plainly, with not a lot of story or not a lot of accusation or attacking energy. You can say, hey, I feel sad when this happens. I feel angry that this happens. I feel frustrated at this. Just share how you feel, because then that lets him connect with you at the place where you really are. Commitment number 4 is an agreement to naming our needs. Picture this. A woman comes home after a hard day. She needs to talk through what happened at her day. She doesn't really want anyone to solve it. She just wants to feel heard, to feel validated. And so she finds her man in the kitchen and she launches in. She starts talking. And sure enough, as guys are guys, 2 minutes into this, he starts making suggestions. He starts telling her how to solve it, who she needs to talk to. Maybe you've experienced this in your relationships as well. I know I have fallen into this trap. And ultimately what happens is that in this situation, she feels dismissed. She feels like he's not listening. She feels like he's just wanting to solve it and fix it and move on, like her problems don't really matter. And at the same time, so she gets mad, he gets confused. He doesn't know what he's done wrong. He thought he was being helpful. He thought that that's actually what she wanted. He felt like he was trying. And so both people, this is super common, where both people will leave that conversation feeling frustrated. And yet neither one did anything wrong. They were just playing entirely different games without even knowing it. So here's what's happening beneath the surface. The feminine brain, when processing emotion, is wired toward connection, feeling understood, oxytocin, expressing those feelings. The masculine brain, on the other hand, when presented with a problem, is wired for solution, is wired for achieving the outcome. Let's solve this, because if we can make progress, boom, the masculine gets a hit of dopamine. So when she starts talking about a difficult situation, his brain hears, whoop, 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 there's a problem. Let's solve it. So he reaches into his best tool belt for those solutions. He doesn't mean to dismiss her. He doesn't mean to not validate her emotions, but that's exactly what her experience is. And so the shift is a single sentence before the conversation begins, where you ask for what you need in that moment, and this can solve enormous problems. Where you say something like this: hey, I've had a really hard day and I really need to just vent for like 10 minutes. I'm not looking for solutions. I don't want you to solve this. I just need you to listen. Would you do that for me? And your man will go into his listening mode, and he will know that just by listening, he's actually helping accomplish a goal. And that is the ninja move to put him in his masculine and still get him that dopamine payoff. When you give him a goal in the conversation before you begin, something changes in him. He now knows exactly how to succeed with you. His goal is to listen for those 10 minutes, and he can achieve that. And he can feel competent and caring at the same time. And you get exactly what you needed, which is to feel heard. So I encourage you to open up with this one sentence of what you need, and you will watch your man do everything he can to meet you there. And agreement number 5 is give yourself and your partner the do-over. When you were playing as a kid and you play Foursquare, or you play a game and someone made a mistake, maybe an extra ball came through your game, or someone ran right through the middle of the game, it was no big deal. You were like, hey, pause, do-over, and you gave yourself a chance to do that round or that point over again. Well, we can do the same thing in relationships. I remember when my wife and I were early married, she came in and I was working hard, I was grinding, we're building this business. And so I've got this huge project due, and she comes in and she was like, hey babe, I just want to remind you that tomorrow morning, this is Saturday, we're going to go to my parents' house. We have that barbecue all day. And my first response was not the best. I literally leaned back and I was like, no, oh man. Because for me, I was stressed. I was behind on a project that I needed to do, and I was hoping to use Saturday morning to get that project done. You have that first response, and then you look and see what the reaction is. She was so mad because I had committed to go to this barbecue with her, and I love her family. And one of the things I love about her is that she loves her family. She's super family oriented. And I can see just the disappointment on her face of how I reacted in that moment. And I lean back and I'm like, no. And I see her and I'm like, oh, can I get a do-over right now? Because in reflection, that's actually not how I wanted to respond to that. I apologize. I'm super stressed about this project. I told her about that. And I said, I want a do-over. And to her credit, she said, okay, give me the do-over. So I had the chance in that moment to say, babe, I love hanging out with your family, and I'm looking forward to being with them on this barbecue. Is there a way that we can make both happen, where maybe you look at after the kids in the morning, I do the project, and then we both leave, and I can have both things happen? And she was like, yeah, absolutely. I can do that. And what would have turned into an argument where she's mad about the way that I said that, and I knew I wasn't at my best. I try to apologize, but she holds it against me. Those kinds of patterns can create friction for hours or even days. The do-over can erase all that. The do-over can give you the refresh moment to say, hey, that wasn't me at my best. Let me step into my best for you because I love you. So that's it. The do-over. At any point in a conversation, even mid-argument, you can pause and say, can I start over? Can I get a do-over on that? That didn't really come out the way that I wanted it to. Or, you know what? I'm feeling defensive right now and I don't want to be. Can we slow down? I just want to take a deep breath. Remember, you are not required to ride an escalating argument all the way to the crash. You can actually stop. You can reset. You can choose a better version of this conversation even after it's already going in the wrong direction. So that is a moment of choosing, and that is where real love lives. Agreement number 1 is lead with what you observed without the story around it. Number 2, shovel while the pile is small. Number 3, eliminate sarcasm and teasing. Number 4, name what you need early in the conversation. And number 5 is give yourself the do-over. Now, what's great is that none of these are dramatic overhauls. None of them require months of work to implement. They are small, powerful moves, and they compound in your relationship. One small shift, you make that consistently over weeks, it changes the entire emotional connection of the relationship. And here's the truth. The quality of your relationship is directly connected to your ability to communicate and to repair. And so my question for you is, which of these really strikes a chord with you? Which of these have you found to be really valuable in your relationships? Go ahead and post that in the comment section below. I appreciate you. Thanks so much for watching. Here is to your amazing love life, and I'll see you soon.